to the services that make a difference in your life. Today, you can verify your earnings, estimate your future benefits, apply for retirement, manage your benefits, and even change your address, all from the comfort of your home. Social Security's online services help put you in control with secure access to your information anytime, anywhere, allowing you to spend more time with family, friends, or simply just enjoying the day. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. See what you can do online at socialsecurity.gov.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's High Yield Savings Certificates. We've got Ricky Meese in the traffic center.
Nice speeds on the Valley freeways for Salt Lake County and on I-15 between Ogden and Provo. But if you are going to be traveling through Juab County, an accident on northbound I-15 halfway between Mona and Santaquin is causing delays. And still, right lanes blocked. This is in the Salt Lake City Sugar House area of 7th East. This is southbound about 2500, 2600 south. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, mix of sun and clouds for the day. Most of the thunderstorms we expect are going to stay in the mountains, and you can expect a high of 85. Right now, 77 and partly cloudy in Salt Lake City at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Today, the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action limiting the use of race as a factor in college admissions. President Biden criticized the court for rolling back decades of precedent and progress. But are we rolling back precedent and progress, or just watching a system that was built on shaky ground finally collapse? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, from the moment the Supreme Court ruling came out undermining affirmative action as a way for higher education to determine their admission process and who gets in, a lot of headlines, a lot of vitriol back and forth between different sides, and a lot of people looking for a political moment, trying to make a statement. But I want to go beyond just the headline of this and actually look at some of the underpinnings of it. Again, whether you agree or not with the court's decision, I think a lot of this actually goes way back to the beginning of affirmative action. We had a conversation with Washington Post columnist Megan McArdle, talking about the shaky ground that affirmative action was built upon and why ultimately that led to the collapse that we actually saw as the Supreme Court ruled today. So in the beginning, we asked Megan McArdle, looking at it today, it's part of the challenge. The shaky ground was that the demographics are vastly different than they were in the mid-1960s.
You know, one thing that I think people really don't have a hard time wrapping their brains around today, especially younger people, is just how much the United States in 1965 really was a nation of black and white. We are talking about more than 85% of the population was white. Almost all of the remainder was black. And, you know, the architects of the system we have now simply did not anticipate a multi-ethnic democracy in which we had overperforming as well as systemically underrepresented minorities.
So I think that's an important thing to remember, that it really was a black and white nation back in 1965, almost 85% of the country being white, the rest mostly being black. And then as some of those immigration rules changed and as diversity began to increase, things started to shift gears just a little bit. Megan told me that the immigration reform really upended the court's original reasoning for establishing affirmative action.
We passed immigration reform that radically increased the number of especially non-white immigrants in the United States. In many ways, this was a great success, but it made it very difficult for the rationales that we had constructed for affirmative action, which I think a lot of people intuitively think is based on a kind of repair of the wrong that was done to Black Americans through generations of slavery and Jim Crow. But that's not actually the rationale that courts chose. For a bunch of reasons, it was sort of difficult to reconcile with some constitutional law. And so instead, what we got was this diversity rationale that it is not permissible to have quotas, but it is permissible to kind of racially balance your class in the interest of having a diverse college class, a diverse workplace, et cetera.
So I think that's important in terms of perspective, in terms of where things were when this all began back in 1965. And then as things began to shift, they couldn't really do it based on just this black and white and just righting the wrongs that were done to black Americans through slavery and Jim Crow, as Megan pointed out to us. The other interesting thing on the day-to-day is the fact that this case, this lawsuit, both for the University of North Carolina and Harvard, were lodged by Asian Americans. So in my conversation with Megan McArdle from the Washington Post, she went on to say that we now have overperforming minorities, and it's difficult to tell them that they have to step aside so that other minorities can have a spot.
Asian immigrants dramatically overperformed compared to whites or black or Latino people. And so we now have an overrepresented, underrepresented minority that just didn't anticipate that we would have a minority that overperformed. And so in practice, how affirmative action has come to be performed in the United States is not what I think, even if people who are uncomfortable with it say it's unfair to discriminate against qualified white applicants, they also feel, it was unfair for generations for qualified black applicants to be discriminated against, and they kind of get the moral logic there. When you're bringing in people who were not here when the discrimination happened and who are themselves minorities who suffer in various ways, and saying to them, no, you need to take a penalty in order to make up for our history, it becomes morally fraught in a way that I think is just unsustainable.
And that's where I think it gets really interesting. Megan McArdle went on to share with us that the affirmative action system just simply became too big to be sustainable, and that you can look at a host of different factors, each of which could have their own claim of discrimination or prejudice of some sort or another. And so Megan kind of walked through the fact that it did just become so big that's part of the ultimate reason why it would collapse.
We have Latinos, we have Middle Easterners, we have various groups, Hawaiian, Native Americans, Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders, and all of them are saying, look, I've also suffered from some history of discrimination where I am. I want to be part of this classification system, and the system that we come up with is just incredibly ad hoc because it's not encoded anywhere in law. It is basically this series of judicial and administrative decisions that take what had been, as I say, a workable framework, if awkward, if unlovely, if, certainly morally contested, but a basically workable framework. And it expands it to this completely irrational, yes, if you're an Afghan, you don't qualify, but if you're Pakistani, you're Asian and you do, you're born 4 miles apart. This doesn't actually make much sense. But, this is how the history unfolds. And ultimately, that system is breaking down because it has gotten too big.
And so that's the part I want to dig into for just a minute. So she mentioned this idea that a Pakistani is classified as Asian, but someone born in Afghanistan 5 miles away is white. None of that even factors into biracial couples and the pluralism that we now have in the country. And so all of these classifications, the further you play those out, the harder it becomes for this system to actually work. I agree with Megan. She said, look, you could say that Latinos and Middle Easterners and Native Americans and Pacific Islanders, all of those groups have suffered different forms of prejudice and hatred and bigotry. And so the further this goes and the more classifications there become, the harder it gets to actually, it becomes so unwieldy that you really can't do anything. And so I think what the court was saying today is look, we can do this different, but it has to be different. That we can't just continue in this current form because the system just doesn't contain it anymore. Now, President Biden took to the podium today after the court ruling came out, talked about his disagreement with the court in terms of the ruling and what they did. And so the president gave some of his own guidelines for higher education.
What I propose for consideration is a new standard, where colleges take into account the adversity a student has overcome when selecting among qualified applicants. Let's be clear. Under this new standard, just as was true under the earlier standard, students first have to be qualified applicants. They need the GPA and test scores to meet the school's standards. Once that test is met, then adversity should be considered, including a student's lack of financial means.
So the president spent a lot of time in his address today going back over and over and over again to the fact that this pool of applicants were qualified. And I don't know that that was ever really contested. I think everyone said, yeah, these people who were admitted, Harvard, North Carolina, that they did qualify under GPA scores and whatever other test scores that they have in their system. What the court was saying was that, look, race cannot be the decider in all of that. And I think where the president tried to land was an interesting place, because the president ultimately said, well, maybe we should factor in how much adversity they've overcome, that could be part of it. Now, part of that could be race connected. Maybe it's something they had to overcome in their history or their geography where they lived and grew up. It could also be part of an inspirational or aspirational. What if this applicant is the first one in their family to go to college? That's surely worthwhile. That might be worth an extra couple of points on the application process. The question and the challenge, though, is really what do we do moving forward? What does that really look like? And how do we make sure that I think we can all agree in terms of the value of diversity? I think the thing we have to be careful of is that if we are constantly classifying and subclassifying every person we interact with based on race or gender or religion or sexual orientation, the more we continue to classify each other, the more we begin to see every difference that we have with another person as a reason for division and divisiveness, rather than looking at the dignity of the person, their character, their accomplishments. And that's where I think we have to get to a different kind of conversation as it relates to this. So, of course, the headlines will continue to rage. We'll hear a lot from both ends of the political spectrum in terms of what this is and what it means. I think the more important thing for all of us is to just think again about how we're looking at the differences in this nation and the dignity we should have for everybody.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Summer in Utah means road trips and road work. This week, get information on the construction that will affect how you get around, roadwork plans around the state, repairs to potholes, and a future project in Spanish Fork. Summer construction, this week on KSL News Radio.
The Dell Technologies Black Friday and July event starts now with limited quantity deals on top business PCs with Windows 11 Pro. Save on select Vostro laptops with built-in security features and select Latitude laptops with enhanced privacy, collaboration, and connectivity. Plus, get special financing with Dell Business Credit. Dell Technologies recommends Windows 11 Pro for business. Call a Dell Technologies advisor at 877-ASK-DELL. Offered to business customers by WebBank, who determines qualifications for and terms of credit.
Yeah, I'm so stressed. Our business is growing. We've got people all over now.
Ooma.
What is that? Meditation?
I'm recommending the Ooma cloud phone system with auto attendant and more than 50 features.
Ooma?
Yep. Switching to Ooma is a cinch. Just $24.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Now you're feeling it. Find small business calm at ooma.com/radio. That's OOMA.com/radio.
When you're looking to really take control of your health and wellness, you really have to do it from a whole approach. You have to look at the mental, the emotional, the habits you have, behaviors. That's what Soda Weight Loss is all about. That's what it did for me. Soda Weight Loss helped me completely reframe how I look at food. I look at it more as fuel. And with Soda Weight Loss, I was able to drop 37 pounds in less than 90 days. I'm over a year and a half into the process now with weekly one-on-one coaching, customized plans. I have all these tweaks I can do along the way. I have instant access to my coach and nutritionist to make sure I stay on path. You can do the same. I'm not the only one. You can check out. There's thousands across the country. And the best thing is you can do it right from your own home. It's so simple. It's so easy with Soda Weight Loss. Take control. Take charge of your weight loss with Soda Weight Loss. SOTA Weight Loss. When it comes to your journey, there's no time to lose, only time to win. Check it out at sodaweightloss.com.
Attention smart homeowners. You don't have to fall for flashy promises and companies that don't even prove their work. At Your Service Pros uses third-party verification software called MeasureQuick to ensure your new HVAC system is installed correctly. This ultimate game changer in the HVAC industry lets you, the homeowner, have proof of how your system was installed. At Your Service Pros utilizes our Bluetooth tools to upload all of your system's information into MeasureQuick. We rely on data-driven insights to properly commission, optimize, and fine-tune your HVAC system for peak performance, improving your family's comfort, lowering your utility bills, and extending the life of your HVAC system. With rebates and tax credits available totaling more than $7,500 on a dual fuel heating and cooling system, it is now more important than ever that your HVAC system be installed correctly. So call us today at 801-YOUR-PRO. That's 801-YOUR-PRO. Have the peace of mind of saving up to 50% on your new system and knowing it's installed correctly by calling 801-YOUR-PRO.
I'm Matthew. I'm a senior at Mountain Heights Academy. It's an online school that doesn't require me to work in the hours I'm least productive. In the morning, I'm super tired. I just don't feel like I'm on my game. Mountain Heights Academy works better for my schedule because I'm more of a night person, so the majority of my school is done at night. Having that control makes me feel more confident about myself overall. It's really empowering to me.
Mountain Heights Academy is an online public school for grades 7 through 12. Visit our website to learn how it can work for you.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Carol Hoffelmeyer. First, even though homelessness is still rising in Utah, the state remains below the national average rates. Utahns experiencing homelessness for the first time saw a 10% increase last year. Second, Republican Becky Edwards has become the first person to submit the 7,000 signatures needed to qualify for the ballot in the race to replace Congressman Chris Stewart. The state elections office still has to verify she's collected enough. Third, voting records for Celeste Malloy, the GOP pick to replace Stewart, show she was a registered Republican when she filed for office. Documents KSL News Radio obtained also shows she was a registered voter in the state. 77 degrees and partly cloudy skies in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
While COVID relief money came at a crucial time for many people, it also became one of the largest targets for fraud. This week, the Small Business Administration announced that scammers stole more than $200 billion in aid during the pandemic. The report came just a few days before the Congressional Budget Office released its 30-year projection of government spending. So we want to look at both of these areas. First, what money did the feds lose? That's your money. And where's our national debt and spending headed? That's your future money, your children, and your children's children's money. And to help us break all of that down, of course, we always turn to Eric Boehm, reporter at Reason, who covers economic policy, trade policy, and elections. And Eric, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Boyd, thanks for having me. We're going to talk about big piles of money and then some really big piles of money.
I know. I was thinking $200 billion was sounding really big, and then the CBO stuff came out. I'm like, That's a lot of trillions. That's way out there. But let's start. You had a great piece in Reason about just what happened with this big dump of money at the beginning of COVID for the Small Business Administration. What actually happened? How did it play out?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is something we've talked about on this program before, and something that we've been following at Reason really, at this point for years, is the kind of fraud and waste that went on in some of these pandemic relief programs. And this week we finally got sort of official numbers. There's been all sorts of different reports out there. The Associated Press put together one a few weeks ago that made quite a splash. There have been some reports from nonprofits looking at government data, so kind of dialing through some of the the details here. But it's been a while. It's been well over a year actually since the last time the Small Business Administration, the Inspector General for the Small Business Administration, put out kind of an update to the amount of fraud in the program. And $200 billion is the top line figure. That's the estimate in the report this week, and that's actually looking at 2 different pandemic programs, looking at both the the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program, which of course is kind of the big one, was the main program that the SBA was handling during the pandemic. And then also the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Fewer people have probably heard of that. It was a smaller program in terms of dollars, but it looks like it may have actually been the one that was hit up for more of these scams, more fraud. A lot of the, not in terms of the overall spending, but in terms of the percentage here, about 33% of the loans distributed through that program, the Inspector General says, were distributed in all likelihood to people who didn't deserve it.
Yeah, see, and that's the stunning. That is a stunning statistic to me, that you can have, almost 20% in one program, 30% in another. That's just going to the wrong people in the wrong places. Now, I almost chuckled just a little bit when they said, but hey, we did get $30 billion back. Or we've at least
that's right. That's what they've.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, I mean, that's what they say they've recovered so far. Obviously, this is an ongoing process. There's a lot of, now we're spending more money basically to chase some of this down.
Right.
They say that they've got, that they've recovered $30 billion of it. So, that's a small bit. Ultimately, though, I mean, it's ultimately 1/6 of the $1.2 trillion that were distributed through these two programs that look to have been stolen, according to this report. So, one out of every $6 basically that was distributed. And I think the Inspector General, as these Inspector General reports frequently are, they cut right to the chase on these things. And I thought the point that the Inspector General made right at the top of this report about the mistakes that the Small Business Administration made in handling the program and just sort of the way in which all of this went down. The report says, quote, that the SBA weakened or removed the controls necessary to prevent fraudsters from easily gaining access to the programs. And then he goes on to say that the allure of easy money in this pay and chase environment attracted an overwhelming number of fraudsters. And I think that really sums it up. Like, that's the way this was handled. It was a pay and chase. It was get the money out the door first and check later. And this is the result.
Yeah, I think you've written before that this was open the bank vault and watch it flee, and then try to figure out who took it later on. Yep. I also love the way you concluded your piece in Reason, that even with what they've been able to collect or seize, there's still about $170 billion, roughly the gross domestic product of Kuwait, that has just vanished out there. And even as awful and big as that sounds, now let's go on to the real big thing, your brand new piece in Reason, talking about the CBO projection in terms of what we're going to spend over the next 30 years. Give us I'm going to brace for impact, but give us a look.
Yeah, all I've done this week, I think, is look at really sobering reports with lots of zeros on them.
Yeah.
This is a report the CBO puts out periodically, a couple times a year. Usually they update these long-term budget projections. The latest one came out yesterday, and it says that the federal government is on pace to borrow $116 trillion over the next 30 years. That's a number that is so large you really can't even conceive of it, 116 trillion. Keep in mind, $1 trillion is 1,000 billion. So we just talked about $200 billion. Now we're talking about, an order of magnitude greater than that. $116 trillion will be borrowed over the next 30 years. That's based on current law. So that's based on that means if Congress and the president don't spend more money without, raising taxes to pay for it, they don't agree to, raise the spending levels at all. That's already, what we will be borrowing in the next 30 years. And of course, I would expect that, spending will go up at some point in the next 3 decades. And if the last 3 decades are any indication, we won't raise taxes to pay for the full amount. So I expect that tally is probably actually overly optimistically low.
Yeah, and that's an amazing thing, that 116 trillion could be an optimistic lowball number there for sure. You did mention in your piece, Eric, that there's a little bit of good news just in terms of kind of the trajectory in terms of the spending.
Yeah, if there's one little sliver of good news in this, it is that some of these projections are obviously looking at 30 years. It's a long time frame that we're looking at here, but long-term borrowing is actually expected to be slightly lower in terms of the amount as a percentage of GDP that we borrow over the next 30 years. And that's the result of the debt ceiling deal that was struck last month. We talked about this on this program at the time. It did have those discretionary spending caps in there, non-defense discretionary spending caps, which are, I think, really limited in terms of what they, do for our fiscal situation at the moment, because it's entitlements that are really driving most of this problem. But you do see, at least in these new projections, a small decrease relative to what the CBO thought we were going to borrow last year. So again, $116 trillion is actually in some ways kind of the optimistic look here. Like, this is we've made a small step in the right direction. And if you ignore some of the stuff that's coming down the pike, we may only borrow $116 trillion over the next 30 years. That's the sunny situation here. And I think all of that really just serves to highlight just how serious of a mess this is. And again, I think we cannot stress enough, this doesn't take into account if the Trump tax cuts are extended, which it looks like they probably will be. That's a hit to revenue.
Right.
So that means you're borrowing more. If Social Security, however that situation gets resolved in the early 2030s, it'll probably involve more borrowing to shore up that program. So that's, more on top of this. So, obviously just, you can't continue spending. And I quote a number of people in the piece from nonprofits that are, the more serious ones in Washington that are looking at this and saying, you can't keep doing this. We're on a trajectory here that is just unsustainable.
Yeah. And as I always tell my wife, when it comes to our bank account, it's just a zeros issue. We got to get the zeros at the other side of the decimal point there. But these are a lot of zeros and a lot of things that we got to continue to watch. Eric Boehm, great pieces at Reason.com. Check those out today. And Eric, we look forward to having you back for some more sunny, optimistic views of the $116 trillion and beyond. But thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for, Boyd. You know it. Thanks so much.
All right. We'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. That's a lot of zeros, folks, and that kind of spending is absolutely unsustainable. We'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. We'll come back. More Inside Sources coming up next.
1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. KSL's top story this hour is breaking news on KSL News Radio. The former high school resource officer who stayed outside during the February 2018 shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, has been found not guilty on all counts. Scott Peterson was charged with child neglect and negligence after the deaths because of the shooting. He was also charged with perjury. The GOP's pick to replace Congressman Chris Stewart on the special election ballot was a registered Republican at the time she filed for candidacy. KSL News Radio's Lindsay Ertz went through Celeste Malloy's voter records.
I obtained the records from the state elections office, and Malloy registered Republican in 2016 in Washington County and never changed her party affiliation through the present day. She was made an inactive voter in 2019 when she moved to Washington, D.C., but an inactive voter does not negate your party affiliation. Nothing in her records from 2016 until the present day shows her affiliation changed. Utah's Republican Party requires her to be a registered member of the party and be a resident of Utah to go through the convention path she ultimately won. Lindsay Ertz, KSL News Radio.
A Republican candidate for Utah's 2nd Congressional District special election has turned in the needed signatures to make the ballot. Becky Edwards turned in 7,000 signatures from registered Republicans to make the ballot. Now the state elections office has to certify them. Your money at this moment, the Dow is up 219 to 34,072. The S&P up 13. The NASDAQ down 17. Coming up, we'll see our first triple-digit temperatures just before the 4th. KSL Weather's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
Early mornings can be hard enough, just getting yourself going.
We try to make it a little easier with news and weather from comfortable, trusted anchors and reporters.
Join us on Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9
on KSL News Radio.
Quality, speed, value for your money, and $1,000 off any roof replacement. That's the IWC advantage. IWC, Intermountain West Contractors, delivers on the things most important to you when it comes time to replace your roof. There could be a dozen different reasons why your roof needs replacement, but just one answer to the problem: IWC. With IWC, you get quality because roof replacement is their specialty, and each job comes complete with the best warranties from the most trusted roofing material manufacturers manufacturer in America. You get speed because IWC understands your time is valuable. In most cases, they can replace an entire roof in just one day. And with IWC, there's the value of knowing they use top-tier quality materials in every installation and deliver it all at an affordable price. And now, for a limited time, save $1,000 on a roof replacement project. Visit IWCroofing.com or call 801-232-5690. That's 801-232-5690.
In this market, you'll find Fisher Investments is different than other money managers.
Different how? Aren't we all just looking for the hottest stocks?
Nope. We use diversified strategies to position our clients' portfolios for their long-term goals.
You don't just provide cookie-cutter portfolios?
No, we tailor our clients' portfolios to their goals and needs.
But you still sell investments that generate high commissions for you, right?
No, we don't sell commission-based products. We're a fiduciary, the highest standard of care for a financial advisor. It means we're obligated to act in our clients' best interest.
So when do you make more money? Only when your clients make more money?
Yep, we have one transparent management fee structured so we do better when our clients do better.
Sounds like you really look out for your clients.
We do, because our priority is helping them achieve a comfortable retirement. That might be why most of our clients come from other money managers. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you switch to us. Fisher Investments. Clearly, different money management.
Investments in securities involve the risk of loss.
Give your savings a boost with 5% APY on a 12-month certificate from Cyprus Credit Union. Now's the perfect time to make the most of increased rates and earn more when you save. Open your Cyprus certificate and start earning 5% APY today. Learn more at any branch or visit cypruscu.com.
Cyprus Credit Union. Your future is our future.
Federally insured by NCUA.
A stranger with a gun came upon two teens taking pictures under a rising full moon. But violence is only the beginning of this story.
Sometimes I thought, there are no miracles. Yeah, there are, and this is a big one.
I'm Amy Donaldson, and I've spent my career talking about how lives are undone by violence. The Letter is a podcast about how lives are remade. Follow The Letter at theletterpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Credit Credit Union's high-yield savings certificates. Ricky Meese, what's going on the roads?
On the Valley freeways, we're crash-free there. We do have a little bit of heavy and slow traffic, likely due to road work, northbound on Legacy going from Woods Cross to Bountiful. And we still have lanes blocked southbound 7th East, about 2500 south. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, thunderstorms in the mountain this afternoon on the last cool day before our first triple-digit day on Monday. Enjoy the heat for the 4th of July holiday when the weather appears to try and cool back off. Right now it's 80 degrees and there's some clouds in the sky at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Last week, 2 IRS employees testified before the House Committee on Ways and Means about their investigation into Hunter Biden for tax crimes. Today, of course, the Congressional Budget Office released a report projecting that the U.S. will spend $116 trillion over the next 30 years. Someone who's been in the middle of all of these conversations is Utah Congressman Blake Moore, representing, of course, Utah's 1st Congressional District in the House of Representatives, and he joins us on the line. And Congressman, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Boyd, as always.
Let's dive right on in. Very busy couple of weeks back there in Washington. You're part of the Ways and Means Committee, and you were involved in these hearings regarding the IRS whistleblower testimony and the Hunter Biden tax investigation. Give us a sense of what did you hear in those committee hearings, and what do you think needs to be happening next?
Yeah, it was definitely a piece that I wasn't expecting to all play out that in that timeline. The week before the Hunter Biden whistleblower piece, when we finished our economic package, the major thing that you do in Ways and Means, the tax and trade policy that we put out, a very good work that was done, and then this whistleblower piece. So here's the big picture: the whistleblower testimony and what you're seeing from David Weiss and Merrick Garland. David Weiss is the prosecutor in the DOJ prosecutor, a Trump appointee, DOJ prosecutor in Delaware. There's a discrepancy between these two entities, and it's about the dollar figure, about the tax delinquency. The whistleblowers are saying Hunter Biden has received over $8 million from foreign entities, something as nefarious as hundreds of thousands of dollars in Porsches and diamonds and stuff from movies, candidly, that I think frustrate a lot of people. I know it does me. And as to why was he on these boards? What influence did he have? And, this existed for several years. And then also, and then 2 days before we're set to release the information, on Tuesday morning, there was an announcement of a plea deal. And so it feels rushed, it feels baked to people. And so there's a discrepancy between the dollar amount and what the criminality of it is, but then there's also a discrepancy in the process. David Weiss and Merrick Garland are saying that David Weiss had full autonomy through the entire time, but the whistleblowers are saying David Weiss actually wanted to move it out of the Delaware jurisdiction and into D.C. and to California, where there was activity that was going on, and he felt like that was going to be a better place to deal with this. But now Weiss and Merrick Garland are saying that he's had that authority the whole time.
Yeah, and that's such a challenging thing, I think, for a lot of the public to really process and think through. Is like, okay, what is the real component here? Where's the truth? Where's the transparency? And where's the process? And I think part of your role in that committee is to make sure that all of those things happen, that you get to the truth, that there is transparency, and that there is the proper process to be followed. So where did we get sideways in all of those?
And that's the part that so that was the goal for us in the Ways and Means Committee. We have jurisdiction over the IRS. You have some very brave IRS employees. Again, our main frustration was with DOJ and not with IRS. I look at this thinking they've done their job, and I represent thousands of IRS employees, and I'm very proud of the work that in a lot of ways that they do. I struggle with the way leadership, and then in particularly the DOJ has approached this. Where we've gone sideways is where is this timeline coming from? Why in the world did I get a notification on my phone? I was one of only 25 people that reviewed this testimony of the IRS whistleblowers, because we're the only committee that can release it to the House of Representatives. And so that was 10 days, probably 2 weeks ago. And then on Tuesday, before we're set to release it on Thursday, there's a plea deal announced. Why was that plea deal not announced 2 months ago or 5 months ago? This investigation's been going on. Why in the world was it 2 days before? And that's the question that we have to have answered. Are they now like, oh, we better hurry and do this because there's going to be more damning or incriminating testimony coming out on Thursday? Let's go ahead and admit that there's fault here and everything. And then the problem is this has been going on since the Trump administration too. So what in the world is going on? Hunter Biden even my Democrat colleagues are saying there's clearly smoke here. I would argue that it's turned into fire now, because there actually is, even if they're just charging him misdemeanors, there is millions of dollars of tax evasion. Right. And was there special privilege given because of the high nature to this, and as the president's son and all that kind of stuff? But now we can actually refer that to the House of Representatives and other committees that oversee the DOJ, like the Judiciary Committee. They can now get involved as well and try to highlight some of that.
Yeah, and that will be the real key, I think, again, getting to that transparency piece, getting it out in front so you can actually go after it and say, okay, what did happen, why, what's the timeline, was there preferential treatment, what happened? Those are things we have to get to. I want to shift gears before I let you go, Congressman, because I know you are always looking at the dollars and cents, and, of course, the CBO released just some knee-buckling numbers projecting that the U.S. will spend some $116 trillion over the next 30 years. And most of the information around that is saying, look, this just is not a sustainable path. And these are probably really rosy, very sunny kind of numbers that are being projected.
We are at a point with our debt to GDP that we were at in World War II. The fundamental difference is that in World War II, when we had a debt to GDP of 106%, that's public debt held, not gross debt even. It's higher. Gross debt was even higher. we were at 106%, but probably more than half of that was defense. And we could take the defense budget in a post-World War II world and reduce it fairly quickly. Because why? Because we didn't have as much conflict, and we were in a post-World War II era. And then Korean War ticked up a little, so we could do a little more spending. You can adjust your spending with regards to defense much easier than the issues that we have now. What dominates our budget now that didn't dominate our budget then? Social Security, Medicare, those Medicaid, big type of government programs that are paid into by the greatest of the Americans that we've had, the greatest generation, and then the baby boomers. They paid into that system. They deserve that system, but we didn't plan for a massive retirement in the 2008 timeframe that we just didn't properly plan for. And that's what's going to be more difficult about this point now. Our debt to GDP is in the 98%. You can say it's 130% if you look at gross debt. But we're ramping that part down is going to be the hard part. People always ask you, though, well, what are you going to do about it? And we look at this last debt ceiling deal. It is not solving the problem, but we actually reduced discretionary spending by a significant portion, trimming out some of that budget and capping it going forward. That should help. But unless we're willing to address our major issues, that's in the range of that budget that we addressed in that deal is about $700 billion, and that's of a $6.2 trillion budget. So our issue now is the $4.5 trillion that we do in mandatory spending, which is why I wanted to be on Ways and Means and the area that you can actually address this. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to make these programs more sustainable and stronger? And you can do that with all of them. I don't buy into the concept that you can't address Social Security without making it better for people. I will not subscribe to that. And we just have to be better than what we're doing now. And politically, it becomes so fraught. And it's blame game, and it's wedge issues, and everybody's been a problem on this one. And it has to be work that we can do, adults in Congress, taking the partisanship out of it and figuring out what needs to happen. And there's really good ideas. There's constant proposals that people are working through. Senator from Louisiana had some really good stuff on Social Security. We're going to work on all that. It's just a matter of can we trim that debt to GDP down lower? If not, this gets to 180% of debt to GDP in 20, 30 years. And our interest is then our largest budget item. And if that happens, we're in a world of total unknown, uncharted territory.
Yeah, man, such crucial conversations. And Representative Blake Moore is in the middle of so many of those. We appreciate your work on all of these things relating to the dollars and cents. And we'll continue to watch that, especially as we move towards the fall. And, of course, got to get the government funded by the end of September. Really crucial conversations for all of those things you just laid out, Congressman. We appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you so much, as always.
All right, we'll step aside for a quick break. When we come back, we're going to examine Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s first televised town hall on News Nation. What was his message? Did he show some courageous vulnerability? What comes next? We'll talk about all of that on Inside Sources. Stick around.
Summer celebrations are almost here.
You can light off your own fireworks until 11 p.m. on the 2nd, 3rd, and 5th, midnight on the 4th.
And the fireworks stands are open.
Even if it's green, it can still burn.
Don't burn down Utah. And come here for updates on safety and restrictions. KSL News Radio, your summertime fun companion for news.
Getting close to retirement? Or have you retired? You've probably got a ton of stress-filled questions on your mind. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth. Getting a second opinion with an individualized investment plan is vital, and our fiduciary advisors do just that. Take it from this Trajan Wealth client.
It was just so pleasant, so comfortable. I think we had 7 different accounts, just stuff scattered all over the place. And then so we just started, here's this, move this. And he even explained it a couple different times. But if I have more questions, he said, just give us a call. And that's what I love. He's a phone call away. I'm glad I know these guys. Such a huge weight off my shoulder.
Imagine not second-guessing investments or monthly retirement income. That's the peace of mind you'll get from working with Trajan Wealth. Call 801-899-7600 today or visit TrajanWealth.com.
Actual client, no compensation, no conflicts. Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
When it comes to your electrical system, do you know the warning signs to look for? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and it's okay if you don't know, but here are a few things that you might not even realize could be a sign of a bigger problem. Wall plates that are hot to the touch, discoloration around switches or outlets, if you hear crackling or popping or buzzing around switches or outlets, a breaker that trips a lot, switches that feel loose when you operate them, if your lights dim or flicker when a major appliance comes on, if your plugs fall out of the wall easily. You know, you're not supposed to have to bend the prongs out on a plug just to get it to stay in the wall. If you notice any of these things, you should consider having a licensed electrician check your system out. If you don't know anyone, Any Hour Services has put together a radio-only special for any homeowners listening. One of our licensed electricians will perform a comprehensive electrical inspection and give you a full written report for only $29. But you have to mention this ad when you call. To schedule your comprehensive electrical inspection by a licensed electrician for only $29, call Any Hour Services at 801-443-7300. That's 801-443-7300. Any Hour Services.
After a long winter, it's finally that time again. Pack your picnics, bring your family and friends, and get ready for memorable musical summer evenings. The Deer Valley Music Festival with the Utah Symphony is back. Beat the heat, break out of the routine, and escape into the mountains and the music. June 30th through August 4th in Park City. Tickets are on sale now at deervalleymusicfestival.org. Step back in time as classical guitarist Pablo Sainz Villegas brings the passionate romance of old-century Spain to center stage with expressive and danceable music, from the fandango to the tango. The Utah Symphony's Deer Valley Music Festival presents Spanish guitarist Pablo Sainz Villegas. Take in the mesmerizing melodies in the beauty of the mountains, July 1st in Park City. Tickets are on sale now at deervalleymusicfestival.org.
You trust us for news and information in your car. Now trust us at home. KSL News Radio is your window to the outside world, keeping you informed on the latest breaking news, weather, traffic, sports, and more. Listen on your Amazon Echo or Google Home device. Just say, Alexa, open KSL News Radio, or listen on the KSL News Radio app. Text the word app to 57500. KSL News Radio, Utah's all-day companion for news.
Register for breaking news updates by texting the word news to the Cypress Credit Union KSL text line at 57500.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Carol Hoffelmeyer. First, even though homelessness is still rising in Utah, the state remains below the national average rates. Utahns experiencing homelessness for the first time saw a 10% increase last year. Second, Republican Becky Edwards has become the first person to submit the 7,000 signatures needed to qualify for the ballot in the race to replace Congressman Chris Stewart. The state elections office still has to verify she's collected enough. Third, voting records for Celeste Malloy, the GOP pick to replace Stewart, show she was a registered Republican when she filed for office. Documents KSL News Radio obtained also show she was a registered voter in the state. 77 degrees and partly cloudy skies in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Well, News Nation recently hosted a town hall event for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., hosted by Elizabeth Vargas. The presidential hopeful is running against President Joe Biden for the Democratic nomination. It's been polling at a kind of surprising 15 to 20%, pretty consistently so far. And the interesting thing to me is that just the protest component within the Democratic Party, or is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. actually getting some messages out that are resonating with some of those Democratic voters? During the course of the evening, he touched on several important features of his campaign, but the question is, will his candidacy really be enough to challenge President Biden and the current administration? So we want to dig into this, less covered than obviously what's happening on the Republican side and the three-ring circus that is continuing to be. So we wanted to get into this. I thought it was interesting that News Nation said, you know what, let's do this town hall. Let's have this conversation with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and see what comes out of that. So an interesting component to all of this is there just doesn't seem like we can have any kind of event without having some mention of former President Trump. And so Elizabeth Vargas mentioned that there were some positive comments by the former president regarding Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And so she asked Kennedy about what kind of man he thought the former president was. Here's his response.
Well, you know, here's what I'm not going to do in this race. I'm not going to attack other people personally. You know, what I'm trying to do in this race is bring people together, is to try to bridge the divide between Americans. When my dad died and we brought his body from New York, Penn Station to Union Station in Washington, D.C., and it was a 2.5-hour ride, but it took 7.5 hours because there were 2.5 million people on that train track. And it was a cross-section American. There were black Americans singing Battle Hymn of the Republic. There were whites who were holding up signs, Goodbye Bobby, Pray for us Bobby, American flag, standing, saluting. He was able to bridge the divide among people who would otherwise be Republican, but wanted somebody who was common sense, who was able to appeal to their idealism, who was able to find the hero in each of them and see themselves as part of a community and part of this, you know, incredible American adventure. And so I'm proud that President Trump likes me, even though I don't agree with him on most of his issues. Because I don't want to alienate people. I want to bring people together.
That was a pretty stirring account there of talking about when his dad, as they were bringing his body to Washington, D.C. It's only a 2.5-hour train ride, but it took almost 7 hours because you had people from every corner and every possible character trait came out to see and to pay tribute and to honor Bobby Kennedy. And I think that's interesting. That's one of those things that, again, I don't think we talk about nearly enough, is this ability to bridge the divide, to bring people together, to help people recognize that they are part of this amazing thing we call America. And I applaud Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for calling that out in this town hall yesterday. It was also interesting. Kennedy was unsure about what he would do and didn't really answer the question about what his campaign would do if it didn't go the way he wanted. So here's the exchange again with Elizabeth Vargas from News Nation, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., talking about whether or not he would support Joe Biden if Biden does indeed secure the nomination.
Of course I'm not going to do that. I'm not
going to do that.
No, of course I'm not. Listen,
if you don't get the nomination, you won't support President Biden?
I don't know what I'll do. Let's see let's see what happens in this campaign. Let's see, you know, what if people are living up to democratic values and having debates and having discussions and, you know, talking to each other, but I'm not going to buy.
And if you feel that's not happening, would you then support a Republican or run as an independent?
You know what? My plan is to win this election. And I don't have a plan B.
So that's really interesting as you juxtapose that to what's going on the Republican side, with a number of the candidates balking at the requirement from the Republicans to say, hey, you have to agree, if you're going to be on a debate stage, you have to agree to support the nominee once that is secured. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. saying, I'm not sure I will do that if President Biden defeats him in the primary. So interesting perspective there. One of the big questions that was brought up during the event, this was a town hall style event brought by News Nation. One of the big issues, of course, was fentanyl, the drug epidemic in the country. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. responded with what I thought was some courageous vulnerability, talking about his own ordeal with addiction. Take a listen.
I have my own history of addiction. So I was an addict for 14 years, starting one after my dad died till I was 28 years old. And I spent a lot of my time thinking about it and seeing what worked. And I have a very good idea of what works and a vision for what we need to do in this country. And we need to make addiction treatment easy, simple, cheap. You know, I know what it's like. I know what the suffering that American families are enduring, and it is a high priority to me. And it's something that, for me, this is going to be my Peace Corps program.
So that's a very fascinating take in terms of what needs to be done on that space. Another one that was interesting that was brought up by an audience member during the course of this town hall was about gun violence, how to reduce it. Here's how Robert F. Kennedy Jr. addressed that question.
You know, we have a gun problem in this country, and I believe in the Constitution, including the Second Amendment. And practically, you know, I do not believe that within that Second Amendment that there's anything that we can meaningfully do to reduce the trade and the ownership of guns. And I'm not going to take people's guns away. And anybody who tells you that they're going to be able to reduce gun violence through gun control at this point, I don't think is being realistic. I think we have to figure out other ways to reduce that violence.
Again, very, very fascinating perspective from RFK Jr. In terms of how he would approach it. He believes in the Second Amendment, says that confiscating the guns, that kind of gun control is not the answer. But there are things that are part of the answer. But we've got to get beyond just the current fake fight, false choice perspective to have a different kind of conversation. I think that's important. I think that's honest. I think his mentioning that those who think they can do it with just sheer control are either naive or just don't quite fully get the scope of what's going on. Part of it can be part of that solution, of course. But again, what we're currently having is an either-or conversation rather than an and conversation, and I think that's what RFK Jr. is trying to get to. Finally, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. also talked about the very reasons, the core reasons why he is running. And again, many within the Democrats and some within his own family have been critical as his effort to mount a challenge to a sitting president. But his description as to why he's running, what he hopes to do, what he hopes to reclaim, is worth taking a listen.
One of my purposes in running is to remind the Democratic Party of, what we are supposed to represent and what we've always represented. And, people have said to me, why don't you run as an independent? And I say, because I'm a Democrat. This is who I am. This is my identity, but I want my party back. I want my party to be the party that I grew up in, the party of John Kennedy, the party of Robert Kennedy, the party of FDR.
So some really interesting perspective there from RFK Jr. talking about his run. And we've talked about this on the Democratic side. It will be a fascinating thing to look at. People are saying, is this a real problem for President Biden, or is this just a headache for the administration? It might be just a headache, but I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has something a little more than just a protest vote going on. I think he's striking some chords that are playing well to some of those within the Democratic Party. We'll continue to watch it as that continues to roll forward. All right, that wraps up hour number one of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We'll step aside for some top-of-the-hour news. When we come back, we're going to look at one of the other Supreme Court cases of the day, one that's not getting nearly as much attention, but one that is worth a conversation. Stick around. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen on the KSL News Radio app and in your car at 102.7 FM. KSL News Radio, your all-day companion for news.
2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. KSL's top story this hour. A small electric company in eastern Utah is warning of an impending energy crisis in the U.S. KSL News Radio's Andrew Gordon has the details.
Many coal-powered energy generation plants are being decommissioned, but there's no definite energy supply that can make up for the loss. Demand for energy increases, but the supply continues downward, leaving a large deficit across the country. Pretty soon, only wealthier citizens will be able to afford electricity, while everyone else will have to do without. There were 9 blackouts in December due to lack of power capacity and vulnerable power grids.
It's believed that the Biden administration's goal of net zero and carbon-free emission is too much too soon. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Former Vice President Mike Pence made a surprise visit to Ukraine today. While there, he met with President Zelensky. That makes Pence the first Republican presidential candidate to meet with Zelensky in Ukraine. Delta pilots in Salt Lake City will soon have a new place to practice their skills, a training facility just west of the airport. Brad Sheehan is in charge of Delta's flight training and standards.
No pilot comes to Delta Airlines as a first job. They all come to us with a lot of experience. But when they come to us, they still have to go through several months of training. And then they come back to us every 9 months to do recurrent training.
The new building will include several flight simulators. Construction should wrap up in 2025. Your money at this moment, the market's actually just closed. The Dow up 269 to 34,122. The S&P up 19. The Nasdaq's just down fractionally. Coming up, a teeny tiny heat wave is on the way for Utah. KSL Weather's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
What do you need to hear in the morning to feel ready for the day?
Important news that happened overnight, the traffic you'll hit on the roads.
You'll be ready for your day with us.
Join Utah's Morning News 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Register for breaking news updates by texting the word news to the Cyprus Credit Union KSL text line at 57500.
Smart, connected, modern. Discover life-enhancing independent living services at Trio South Ogden. They do things a little differently there because you're different. With everything you need to support your best self, you'll find that joy isn't just for the young, it's for the young of heart. Trio South Ogden's signature programs provide a unique approach to wellness that brings living well and well-being to life. To learn more, contact Trio South Ogden at 801-475-4004 or visit triosouthodden.com.
Can an insurance bot ever really understand your needs?
Do you think I'd benefit from bundling my auto and home coverage?
Searching for homes with car dealerships nearby.
Sure, robots listen, but do they understand you? At Farm Bureau Financial Services, we'll help you save money and time by bundling your auto and home insurance. Find an agent at fbfs.com/protect. It's your future. Let's protect it. Farm Bureau Property and Casualty Insurance Company, Western Agricultural Insurance Company.
With the economy the way it is, you're probably staying put. So invest in your home, your number one asset, with beautiful custom replacement windows from Advanced Window Products. They're a local Utah company building beautiful vinyl framed and insulated double pane windows for 37 years right here in Salt Lake City. Advanced Window Products will save you money on your energy bill. Get security features to keep your family safe. And at Advanced Window Products, it's all custom. And the best part? They're local. They build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. So there's no middleman markup. You save on the highest quality windows in Utah. Plus, Rocky Mountain and Dominion offer rebates. For a limited time, they offer 60-month 0% financing. And right now, get $2,000 off 10 windows or more. They're working 8 weeks out. So make the call now. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100 or visit advancedwindowsusa.com.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful when Mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. I wanted a better relationship with Dad, so I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I'm sure glad I did. Is someone's drinking troubling you? You might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
Get Mr. Max Performance Missionary Package. 1 performance suit, 4 and collar stretch shirts, 3 ties, 1 mission belt, and 1 pair of Echo or Johnston & Murphy shoes. Just $595.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's high yield savings certificates. We've got Ricky Meese in the traffic center.
Some slowdowns northbound I-15 in Davis County, and it's moving a little better, but from Centerville up to about Glover Lane, you are going to see busier than normal traffic. Also, road work causing a slower drive on southbound Legacy Parkway as you're leaving Bountiful and making your way towards the I-215 junction. Fill up your bucket list in Box Elder County. History, recreation, and wildlife, along with excellent dining and shopping await you. Find out more at visitboxeldercounty.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, a steady climb to 100 degrees starts tomorrow. Sunny skies for the weekend, partly sunny for the 4th of July holiday. Right now, it's mostly cloudy and 79 degrees at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Today's big news surrounding the Supreme Court, of course, is centered on affirmative action. But that's not the only impactful ruling of the day from the Supreme Court. Earlier, they ruled in favor of a Christian mail carrier who didn't want to work on Sundays, strengthening protections of religious rights at work. So what does this mean for businesses, for people of faith, for people of no faith? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, as we look at some of the Supreme Court decisions coming out today, of course, most of the oxygen and attention's going to the affirmative action case, but also a very important case relating to religious liberty, religious freedom, working in a pluralistic world. And Paul Lambert is an expert on religious pluralism in society, a senior business fellow at the Religious Freedom and Business Foundation. And this fall, he'll actually be joining BYU's Wheatley Institute as the director of Religion, the Religion Initiative. And Paul, welcome back to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with the ruling itself in terms of the Christian mail carrier. Give, for our listeners who haven't been following this one as closely, what was this really all about?
Sure. The basic overview is there was a mail carrier who didn't want to work on Sundays because of his religious beliefs, and over a period of time sought different accommodations. The Postal Service was able to accommodate him at first, but eventually required him to work on Sundays, which ultimately ended in his resignation. And then he sued, saying that that was violating his religious freedom rights and their refusal to accommodate his desire not to work on Sundays. So that was the case at hand at the Supreme Court.
And so in the ruling today, a lot of this I know goes back to a 1977 Supreme Court case where it was really kind of laying the baseline in terms of being able to accommodate. And so just kind of walk us through what that was and then what we learned in the ruling today.
Right. So yeah, what was at hand in this decision was what undue hardship means. And let me just provide a little bit of context there. So Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act requires businesses to actually accommodate for several things, including religion of an employee. And the case you're referring back to is TWA versus Hardison in 1977, in which the Supreme Court sided with TWA, saying that they had an undue burden on their company, and because of that, were able to not accommodate the religious request of a particular employee, Hardison in this case. The case today, over time, when it comes to accommodations in the workplace, there's been a lot of question. Well, what does undue hardship mean, or what does undue burden mean? What is the requirement that a company has to meet in order to say no, we can't accommodate that, or we won't accommodate that? And it's been recently understood that de minimis, or a minor accommodation or minor level, would happen in that. So if it's anything more than that, if it's anything more than de minimis or a small accommodation or a small burden on the company, rather, then they could refuse. And what the court has said here is, no, an undue hardship means that this is a significant hardship, that the company needs to prove that this is really having a negative impact on business. And only under those conditions can you say that we will not accommodate. But the Title VII does require you to make significant effort before you can say that we won't accommodate for religious reasons.
Yeah, and so as you look at that now, Paul, and I know in a lot of your work with the Religious Freedom and Business Foundation has been looking at how do we create space for people to bring their whole authentic self to the workplace, the benefits of all of that. And so how does today's ruling change even the perception or the culture within organizations as it relates to making those religious accommodations?
Yeah, great question. So the way I'll answer that is, obviously we all get focused on, for good reason, a case like this. But when it comes to business, there's really two things we should think about. One is what the law is, right? And the foundational law hasn't changed, and that is the Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. All companies have been under that requirement to accommodate for religion and other things for a long time, right? And so that has been in their policies. It's been in the laws that they have to follow. What this is doing, of course, is saying, well, you have to perhaps take this more seriously. If you aren't already, you need to make sure that you are prepared to make significant accommodations when someone requests them for sincerely held beliefs or religious beliefs. And that's around the law. The other thing that I would suggest, though, is that we don't go to a company to work for a company because their policies are good, right? We work for a company because they have a good culture, or they have something that we believe in. And so there's two things at play here. One is the law, and what is the policy, and how does that impact companies at the bare minimum? What is the law they have to follow? But I think for companies, the more important question is, what are we doing to create an accommodating workplace? What are we doing to create a place where people want to work and want to be? And that's where companies, that are getting this right and doing a good job of this ruling isn't going to have an impact on them because they're already going out of their way. They're not on the defensive saying, what's the line that we have to walk in order to accommodate or not accommodate? Rather, they're saying, what can we do to accommodate? And that's where companies are seeing the most success, is actually being proactive about accommodating religious and other areas, whether that's gender or race or sexual orientation. They're being proactive about how we can create environments of accommodation, and that's where companies are really thriving with their employee relationships.
Yeah, and that is such an important part of that. In fact, we always say that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and we're actually going to go in the next segment to a conversation I had with Monty Moran, one of the co-CEOs formerly of Chipotle, and the culture that they created there. A lot of that doing these very things that you've shared, Paul, in terms of being accommodating, creating that space. So as you look at this moving forward, Paul, what are some of the other things that we should be thinking about as we create that culture in a pluralistic society? What are the things that we should all be thinking about?
Yeah, so again, I'll kind of frame it in a way that I hope is helpful to listeners. One, so accommodation really should be the basic level of what we're trying to do. When someone comes forward and says, I have this belief or this practice, is there a way to accommodate that, right? And that's a great place to start. But beyond accommodation would be things like recognition, right? So instead of just responding to requests, how about we go out and try and recognize that people do have belief systems. They do have religious beliefs that matter to them, and it changes the way people view the world. So beyond accommodation, let's recognize. And then beyond that, we should celebrate or create space for that person, right? So instead of, again, being on the defensive or being only reacting when we're asked, saying, hey, help me understand what you need. Help me understand what drives you, what's important to you, so that we can create a space for you to contribute fully. And, I think, again, what companies are beginning to understand is that if they want the most out of their employees, if they want to get the highest return on investment in that particular employee, the only way for that employee to give their whole self, their whole contribution, all of their skills and qualities, is to create a space where they're able to do that. And that means not just accommodating, not just reacting, but going out of your way to recognize, to celebrate, to create space for someone to be authentically who they are, including their faith.
I love that. Paul Lambert, Senior Business Fellow at the Religious Freedom and Business Foundation. And again, this fall, he'll be joining the Wheatley Institute as director of the Religion Initiative. And Paul, fantastic perspective today. Some great things for all of us to think about. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, again, that's Paul Lambert. And that's an important part of that discussion in terms of not just tolerating, not just accommodating, but celebrating. And again, there are so many out there who want us to look at every difference as a reason for more division and divisiveness. But if we can transcend that, look at the dignity of others, the uniqueness that they bring, the divinity that they bring to the workplace and to our relationships, that's where democracy really thrives.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Utah needs to replace Representative Chris Stewart.
In this special election, only one person can come out of convention, and that person is Celeste Malloy.
Now we know at least one Republican has made the ballot.
She did get the endorsement from her former boss, Congressman Chris Stewart. She called herself a political dark horse.
Now it's a foot race for a handful of other challengers to collect signatures and make the primary. The drop-dead date is Tuesday the 5th. We'll update the field all this week on KSL News Radio.
Are you or someone you take care of as their caregiver living with Alzheimer's disease? This study just might be for you. Consider participating in Athira's clinical trial exploring a novel repair and regenerative approach to Alzheimer's disease. Pantheon Clinical Research in Salt Lake City is looking for people with mild to moderate dementia, 55 to 85 years old. A consistent caregiver or support person is necessary for the conduct of this study. This study is a late-stage clinical study of an investigational drug for the treatment of mild to moderate Alzheimer's disease. Pantheon Clinical Research has over 30 years' experience with clinical trials. They conduct their business with professionalism, efficiency, and integrity. Contact Pantheon Clinical Research in Salt Lake City today. Again, call Pantheon Clinical Research today at 385-281-0550. That's 385-281-0550. Or go to pantheonclinical.com. That's pantheonclinical.com.
Does your student have a hard time getting up in the morning? Or struggle to fit certain classes into a packed schedule? Consider a few online classes at Mountain Heights Academy, a tuition-free online public charter school. Any Utah student in grades 9 through 12 can replace a few traditional classes with high-quality online courses and get the best of both worlds. Their teachers have years of experience in digital education, and all courses meet Utah graduation requirements. Learn more at mountainheightsacademy.org.
At Lowe's, we're always bringing pros more ways to save. Right now, save on Valspar 5-gallon Ultra Flat Paint. Was $131, now just $123. Plus, MVP's Pro Rewards members earn up to 900 bonus points with the purchase of a Graco Magnum X7 paint sprayer. Lowe's knows pros. Valspar offer valid through 8/2. Selection varies by location. Estimated bonus points valid through 6/30. Actual awarded bonus points calculated on purchase price before taxes and after applicable discounts, if any. Subject to program terms and conditions.
Any Hour Services can help unclog any drain in your house. Whether you have a backup, a clog, or a slow drain you want fixed, call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. First, a former Florida sheriff's deputy who failed to intervene during the high school shooting in Parkland back in 2018 has been found not guilty of child neglect and other crimes in a Florida courtroom today. Second, a small electric company in eastern Utah says current federal energy policies are unsustainable. Third, a 3-year-old boy is dead after drowning in a swimming pool at an apartment complex in Midvale yesterday afternoon. Police say the boy got out of his apartment without being noticed and got into the pool. Mostly cloudy and 79 degrees in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, as most of you know, I spent about the first 25 years of my career focused on leadership, working with organizations around the world as an executive coach, as a mentor, as someone who facilitated a host of retreats for executives trying to get their act together and figure out what leadership was really all about. So there's nothing I love more than seeing someone who gets it, and not just gets it, but actually goes out and does it. And so I have really been looking forward to this conversation. Monty Moran, of course, is one of America's most admired business leaders. He's the former co-CEO of Chipotle Mexican Grill. And the most important thing to me in all of that was that he built a culture. I always say culture eats strategy for breakfast, and at Chipotle, they built exactly that. And we're really thrilled to have Monty joining us on the program today and looking at leadership, I think, in a way that actually is authentic and real and the most powerful way to build a culture. Monty has a new book coming out called No One is a Stranger, Finding Love, Connection, and a Brilliant Life. And Monty Moran, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much, Boyd. Great to be here.
So let's start with your work at Chipotle, because to me that really was a process of going from a regional burrito chain to a Fortune 500 rock star. Tell us about the culture component of that, what you tried to build, how'd you go about that?
Yeah. Well, what was neat about Chipotle was, it had a great concept to start with. But when I went in there, my goal was to build a kind of culture where people, felt super, super empowered and were working not because someone told them to work and not because they were getting a paycheck, but because they really believed in what they were doing. And in order to do that, of course, I had to give them a vision, and give them an idea of what would happen if they, what their lives could look like if they built terrific cultures within their restaurants, if they elevated each other, not just themselves, if they found ways of providing a wonderful customer experience and really building a team where each and every one of them cared a lot about the others. Because I think the foundational principle that I shared when I very first started at Chipotle and also at my law firm was that each of us in this lifetime will be rewarded based on our effectiveness in making the people around us better. And, that foundational principle, Boyd, and frankly, I try to live my whole life that way. And I think that everyone would be well served to live their life that way, because anyone in this life that I admire, and probably anyone you admire if you check it out, and anyone that's most admired, I think, generally in history, has been someone who really devoted themselves to the well-being or benefit of other people, try to help others.
Yeah.
And so if you can create a culture within an organization and even a large company, and I would say especially a large company, where each and every person there knows that the way they will get ahead in the company as well as getting ahead in life is by making the people around them better, it's really, really powerful, because that's basically what leaders do, isn't it? A good leader makes others better, elevates other people, ignites a spark in them so that they are doing something that they want to do, not just something they're told to do.
Yeah, no question. And I want to dig into several components of just the title of your new book. Had me running down a whole bunch of rabbit holes in terms of, okay, where's he going here? Where's he going there? But I want to start with just straight up on the title. No one is a stranger. Why that?
Yeah, I tell you what, it took me a long time to find a name for this book. And then when I was reading I was reading my own book before, the manuscript, and that sentence was in there. No one is a stranger. I'm like, that really encompasses it. So I decided to name it that. But my point is this, love isn't really something that each of us has to give other people. Love is something that exists out there, right? Love to me is the same thing as God, right? Or the same thing as truth. These things to me are synonymous. So love's out there, and the best thing we can do is allow love to flow through us. And if we allow love to flow through us, and someone else who we're with, even if they're a stranger, is allowing love to flow through them, then even two quote-unquote strangers walking down the street can have a really wonderful connection, even in a moment, even in 10 or 20 seconds. There can be a wonderful connection. Heck, it could even be 1 second if it's just a loving glance to someone else that gives you a loving glance and walks by on a trail or on a road. And so really, this idea of strangers and beware of strangers always bothered me, even since I was a little kid, because I was like, what does it mean to be a stranger? Are they strange because I don't know them? Absolutely absurd,
Yeah.
And so I thought that was a good title. It reminded me of how much I thought that was just an idiotic concept that people are strangers. Someone's not a stranger. They're just someone that you don't know. But the reality is you kind of do know them, even if you don't, because each of us in this whole planet, all of us have so much in common, right? Each of us wants to be seen. Each of us wants to be valued, understood, and loved. That's what all of us want. That's what the President of the United States wants, and that's what a person doing their first day as a janitor in a high school wants. We all want, to be seen, valued, understood, and loved. And a lot of us go about doing that, I think, in ways that are very ineffective.
Yeah.
And I think some of us go about doing that in ways that are more effective. And my goal by writing this book is to help people go about that in ways that are more effective, and using some of the things that I've learned throughout my life and my career as a CEO of a law firm and Chipotle and so forth.
So important. And that we've been talking a lot about the connection component today. We were going through Arthur Brooks, a good friend of the show, on his Art of Happiness podcast, had the Surgeon General on, and they were talking about just the disconnection that's happening. And one of the things that you have in the book that I love, and I think it's such an important part, is this whole idea of listening and asking questions. And that really, the holiest thing you can give to another person is your presence, your full attention.
Absolutely.
And the next level is to be curious and asking the right kinds of questions. Walk us through your view of that.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. That's a wonderful question. Well, the reality is that giving someone your presence is huge because your presence is the way you allow love to flow through you to another person. But when you are curious, curiosity is in and of itself a loving act. I mean, just by being curious, what are we doing? We're asking someone a question because we want to understand them better, want to get to know them. And by asking that question, we're curious about something that they have that we don't, or information or knowledge they have that we don't. And by asking them a question, we're promoting them to the position of being our teacher for a moment, and thereby subordinating ourselves to the position of student. And that's really, really important and especially when someone in a quote unquote leadership position is curious and asks questions of someone who is, say, an entry-level employee, what that high-level leader is showing is that, hey, I actually want to learn from you. I want to learn from the entry-level people. And so at Chipotle, I did over 25,000 interviews one-on-one with people in our restaurants. I talked to every single person in every single restaurant, every single visit, sitting down one-on-one. And that sitting down, Boyd, is really important because it gives some solemnity, or it sort of honors the person. I mean, people sit down when they do the most important things of their lives, whether it be a great dinner or, dignitaries sit down to talk about business, whatever. And so, but when you're curious, you promote that person. So each time I sat down with those people and asked them a bunch of questions about them, and it wasn't just questions about business. In fact, I was talking about just asking them questions about who they are, what makes them tick, what they love about life, what's their family like, what do they, and just get to know them. And by getting to know them, I had a great connection. And by having a great connection, you know, you could feel that love flow. And the whole culture of Chipotle became, as one of my good friends says, like a cult, but in a good way.
The positive view of that.
Like a cult, but in a good way. Because everyone just loved each other, and everyone was really, really bought in to this notion that by making the people around them better, that would be what would elevate them in terms of their position at Chipotle, but also in terms of their spiritual life and the way they felt about themselves and their sense of fulfillment as a human being. And that's really why, after writing, you know, Love is Free, Guac is Extra, about leadership, really talk about how I built Chipotle in the law firm and built that culture. No One is a Stranger is more of a book for everybody.
Yeah.
It's more of a book to say, like, hey, if you can understand these concepts, you can learn to have a much more extraordinary life, because the only way, you know, Boyd, to have an extraordinary life, and you know this really well from all your work, is to have extraordinary relationships. It's the only way.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't have great relationships, your life's going to suck. It's not going to be much fun.
That's exactly right. So true. So true. I want to get to one last component, and that is this whole idea of allowing your brilliance to come out, living that brilliant life. And you attack this in the book in so many different ways, but I think one of the important ways is having that courageous vulnerability to be authentic that way, and then to really break beyond that in terms of that humility, and then looking at what is it that actually creates that brilliance and allows that to flow.
Yeah, well, great questions. I love this. I could talk to you forever. But, you know, I think that in terms of brilliance, each and every person in this world is brilliant. I think most of them don't know it. Most of them don't experience it. Most of them don't let it flow, but they've got brilliance. And so many people in this world are trying to be like someone else. And it's a pity, because the uniqueness of each and every individual person is so special and so extraordinary. But the only way to find your inner brilliance is to, you know, learn to connect with, you know, sort of the universe, or sort of connect with yourself and the world by being yourself, by being open-hearted, by being vulnerable, by letting all of your weaknesses show. In fact, I say in the book, I guess I said in Love is Free, that we should advertise our weaknesses. You know, let people know that we're weak, because what do you do when someone's weak, Boyd? What's automatic?
Yep.
You want to help them.
Go help, yeah.
I mean, right? I mean, if you see someone in the street going, ow, 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 you know, rolling in pain, you're going to go, hey, what can I do? Are you okay? Can I help you? Can I call an ambulance? It's human nature. We want to help someone. But who do we least want to help? We least want to help people who look like they don't want or need help. You know, hey, I've got this. Hey, I don't need you, you know? So vulnerability is the opposite of that. I don't need you. Vulnerability is like, hey, I'm here. Here's who I am. Here I am in all my nakedness and all my, if not physically naked, here's my spirit wide open. This is who I am, for better or for worse, you know. And when you really open yourself up in that way and really make yourself vulnerable and really let people see, let's say, your soft underbelly, so to speak, spiritually, what they do is they come towards you, and these incredible connections form. And those connections are the foundation of any great relationship, whether it be business, whether it be your husband or wife or partner, whether it be a boyfriend, girlfriend, or whether it be a good friend, or even someone on the street who just makes you feel great just by walking by and giving you that special smile.
Absolutely. The book is No One is a Stranger, Finding Love, Connection, and a Brilliant Life. And Monty, I'd keep you on here for the next 4 hours. We just barely scratched the surface. Everyone go out, and this is one of those books you have to pick up and read and experience. And again, it's not just for leaders. This is for everybody. I do wish a few folks in Washington, D.C. would read this in particular, because I think it would change the dynamics and how we see each other, the dignity, especially the dignity of those that you disagree with. And Monty, you've obviously built an extraordinary career and organization. More importantly, you've impacted lives doing it one-on-one. No one's a stranger. Monty, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Boyd. I'm really honored. Thanks so much.
All right, we'll step aside for bottom of the hour news. Don't go anywhere. Ian Rowe is going to join us coming up next, talking about affirmative action case, what it means moving forward. Stick around. We'll be right back.
12:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. KSL's top story this hour is national news. The Supreme Court has struck down the affirmative action at the nation's colleges and universities. President Biden shared his disappointment.
The truth is, we all know it. Discrimination still exists in America. Discrimination still exists in America. Discrimination still exists in America. Today's decision does not change that.
The president called on colleges and universities to continue their commitment to diversity. University of Utah law professor Paul Cassell told David Dujanovic this means race shouldn't be the decisive factor in getting into college.
To bring it into our home state,
both the University of Utah and Brigham Young University, to provide two prominent examples, will be working under exactly the same rules following today's opinion.
The ruling also applies to both public and private schools. Cassell says it will be interesting to see if the decision impacts the workforce, where many corporations also use affirmative action policies. A jury has acquitted the former school resource officer who stayed outside during the February 2018 mass shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Scott Peterson was found not guilty of all charges, including child neglect and negligence. On Wall Street today, the Dow finished up 269 to 34,122. The S&P up 19. The Nasdaq finished down fractionally. Coming up, there's a slight warm-up before we hit 100 degrees on Monday. Weather's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
We have enough people running around Broadcast House at 4 in the morning to field a football team.
Producers, reporters, the traffic team, and us.
This is Tim and Amanda.
Join us each morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Have you Googled yourself lately? Are there negative posts from an ex-employee or from a former client? Maybe an outdated news article or sensitive personal information about your family? Search engines don't always get it right. For right or wrong, it's your reputation on the line. That's where Reputation Defender by Norton comes in. One of the most trusted names in online reputation repair, Reputation Defender has been fixing people's search results for over 15 years. Their cutting-edge approaches help you to wipe away unwanted information in your search results. They also promote the good stuff so that it rises to the top, helping you put your best foot forward. Your good name is too valuable to leave to the whims of a Google algorithm. Take control with Reputation Defender. You can start by getting your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com or call 800-401-6681 to speak to an expert. That's 800-401-6681.
So you'd like to start enjoying your home a little more without climbing the stairs or doing yard work. How about spacious living in a newly designed, planned community with access to activities like golf, pickleball, and even leisurely strolls on beautiful open trails? It's yours with Nilsson Homes. They've been building homes across the Wasatch Front for over 45 years. Now see their latest single-level living community in Davis and Weber County. Brand new, move-in ready homes in the heart of Davis and Weber County, offering all the things you want in low-maintenance, luxury, single-level living. Easy access to just about everything. And best of all, no more stairs, lawnmowers, or yard work. Nilsson Homes has thought of everything, and it's done for you. Take advantage of amazing financing or reverse mortgage options. Nilsson Homes, luxury, low-maintenance living. Visit nilssonhomes.com. That's Nilson homes.com.
If you want a heating and air company that uses third-party verification of their work, that is one of the highest rated on both Google and Yelp, then call At Your Service Pros at 801-YOUR-PRO.
Dave and Dujanovic.
One of the best ways to get listeners involved in the conversation is to have a clear opinion.
Listener participation. We invite phone calls all the time, and Dave and we're learning things from them too.
Listen for Dave and Dujanovic 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's High Yield Savings Certificates. Ricky Meese is in the traffic center. What's going on?
No accidents, but we've had some unusual spots of slowing northbound on I-15 scattered from Midvale all the way up to 2100 South. Good news for Legacy drivers. All lanes now open once again. Southbound Legacy as you go from Bountiful down to I-215. Support cancer patients through theater with Hope Box Theater in Kaysville. Wait until dark. Running Friday, Saturday, and Monday evenings through July 1st. Tickets benefit cancer patients. Visit hopeboxtheater.org. That's hopeboxtheater.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather. As the temperatures rise, the clouds are getting kicked out of the skies. 85 today, 89 tomorrow. Saturday's up in the low 90s. Sunday and Monday, 97, 100 for Monday. And the clouds move back in, cooling things off just a little bit. Right now, it's pretty cool. Mostly cloudy and 80 degrees at KSL News Radio. 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
As we come down the home stretch of the show, we're actually going to go back to the beginning where we started today with the Supreme Court's decision to end affirmative action. And while we see, and many see this as another point of division for the country, a setback for diversity, could this actually be an opportunity for minority students moving forward? We are thrilled to have back on the program with us Ian Rowe, Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, where he focuses on education and upward mobility, family formation, and adoption. He's also the co-founder of Vertex Partnership Academies, also the author of Agency. We talked about this a couple of months ago, the 4-point plan, free for all children to overcome the victimhood narrative and discover their pathway to power. And Ian, welcome back to the show.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be back and on this momentous occasion, a great day for merit and agency.
Yeah, and let's dig into that. You posted something on Twitter that caught our attention today. You said that years from now, black students admitted to top schools will say thank you to the Supreme Court for the decision that removes the perception that the only reason they got in was due to race. Talk about that for us.
Well, I was a student at Harvard Business School many years ago, and I will always remember the first day. This was in 1991. This was around the same time that Clarence Thomas hearings were going on, and there was this question about whether or not he'd actually earned his way even to nomination to the Supreme Court. And I was sitting with two black male second-year students. They were joking about how they got into Harvard Business School, and one said, because I was a diversity admit. And he said it in a joking way, but you could tell that somewhere deep inside there was this self-doubt. And I wrote an essay on it nearly 30 years ago. I'm pulling it up.
Wow.
And what it goes to highlight is that for all of the good intentions of race-based affirmative action, what it instituted for many young black Americans is what's often called imposter syndrome. You didn't make it there because of your merit, your work, everything that you did. You made it there simply because of your skin color. And so I think this decision today will acknowledge that there may have been a time in our country where race-based affirmative action was maybe a leg up, but we have now made far too much progress. And if one were to look at the data in the two cases of Harvard and UNC, it was so blatantly obvious that Harvard was discriminating against Asian students in favor of black students. It was undeniable. And so that's why I wrote this post, that years from now, many black kids who are in elite schools will be able to say, I got here because of my merit. And we need a system, a society that is built on that. And neither of these negative or positive assumptions that's simply based on your skin color, that means you are inherently less than or inherently more than.
That's such an important part of that conversation. And from your experience, Ian, both as a black man going through that process, being at Harvard, also the work that you've been doing in inner cities, talk to us a little bit about how this decision is actually going to give more agency back to those minority students, and how might that impact their trajectory moving forward?
Yeah, great question. I mean, Justice Thomas, in his opinion, said, quote, the solution to our nation's racial problems cannot come from policies grounded in affirmative action or some other conception of equity. Racialism simply cannot be undone by different or more racialism, end quote. The point he's raising is that if we really want to create a society defined by upward mobility, we don't do it by creating these artificial interventions that make assumptions based on race. We focus on the things that actually matter. How do we have more young people born and raised in strong families, typically married two-parent households? How do we ensure that every young person, every family has the power of choice, school choice, so that they have the educational freedom to choose the school that they believe will be the best for their child? In the district in which we just launched our high school, Vertex Partnership Academies, only 7% of the kids that start ninth grade 4 years later graduate from high school ready for college. 7%.
Wow.
Why would we expect kids who are 4 years later then applying to Harvard or any other school would be ready? And yet there's been this cynical approach to, well, let's have race-based affirmative action to be this kind of back-end Band-Aid to create some kind of artificial safety net, but it does a disservice to the very kids that we're talking about. So my hope is that this decision exposes what the real issue is, and that we need more kids coming out of our K-12 public education systems that can compete on equal footing.
Yeah, and that is such a vital part of this discussion. So often it seems like with the government intervention, we're parking an ambulance down at the bottom of the cliff as opposed to building a fence up at the top and creating that space, as you said, for that opportunity, that innovation, that ability to really move forward. It's been interesting in the past few weeks as we've looked around this, anticipating this ruling coming out from the Supreme Court. And you've had a number of people like Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina, who has been attacked from a lot of different quarters, that talking about merit, talking about upward mobility was the wrong conversation for the country.
Yeah, I actually remember Senator Scott, as part of his campaign, acknowledges the history of our country and yet said things have certainly progressed to the point where a black person or a person of any race, if given the right supports like a strong family, access to school choice, strong faith, can be successful. And Joy Behar on The View said, no, you don't understand what it means to be a black person. So he actually went on the show to have a conversation, and the host that interacted with him, as he tried to say, no, here's the progress that's been made. We've had presidents and governors and business leaders, and for every point of progress that Senator Scott said, here's evidence of what black people have been able to do in this country. Sunny Hostin, I think is the name of the host on The View, she said, no, that's an exception. That's an exception. That's an exception. With the obvious point saying, yeah, maybe you're an exception, but the normal black person is oppressed in this country. Even if I'm successful, that doesn't mean anything. There's nothing to learn. And it is that kind of vicious mindset that my hope is this decision helps to eradicate. That no black person in my entire 15 years of running schools, elementary, middle, and now high schools in the Bronx, I've never had a parent of my almost, 100% black and Hispanic kids tell me, please, Mr. Rowe, please teach our kids, our black kids, that they're going to be oppressed and that they're marginalized. And the only way they can be successful is if there's race-based affirmative action to save them from this oppressive structure. We have to move on. We have to have the courage and confidence in our kids, black kids, Hispanic kids, all kids, to know that they can succeed without these kinds of crutches.
Yeah. One of the things that you have been extraordinary in leading conversations around is this whole idea that, yes, have things gone wrong in the past? Yes. Was there racism? Yes. Was there oppression? Yes. All of those things are yeses emphatically. And the fact that we have so many today that seem to be determined to have us view every difference. We have, whether it's skin color or religion or sexual orientation, that every difference is a reason for division and divisiveness, as opposed to looking at those differences as part of a beautiful divinity and diversity that actually is good for democracy. How do we get to that conversation?
Well, hopefully decisions like this force us to say, well, maybe there are factors beyond just race. I mean, our diversity, it's the things that we have in common that bind us together as Americans. One of the ironies of this case, if you looked at the data for the black students that were accepted at Harvard, 2/3, almost 70% of them were from middle and upper class backgrounds. These are black kids who are either recent immigrants or native born, but their families typically, they were raised in married to parent households, lawyers, doctors, professionals. And so in many ways, this is not who the original race-based affirmative action was geared to even serve. So we as a country have to have the courage to say, you know what, job well done. It doesn't mean that we're perfect, but maybe race is no longer the thing that should divide us, and that let's look at other ways that we can achieve upward mobility from people of all races. One consideration that I've put forth is that race-based affirmative action has now been deemed unconstitutional, but what about class-based affirmative action for those folks who have economic disadvantage who are still talented? I mean, all the kids in my school, in the Bronx, they're going to be working hard. When they are starting to apply to these schools, should they be given consideration because of the economic hardships that they have faced and they've still demonstrated academic prowess? I say yes, but we don't reduce them to a single characteristic of race on the assumption that they're inherently oppressed based on that one factor.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting that President Biden today sort of went that direction a little bit, saying, well, hey, maybe we should factor in adversity or things that they've overcome as part of it. Maybe if they're a first-generation college student, maybe that's a bonus point. Or if they've come out of some economic uncertainty, maybe that's a bonus point in consideration. But as you said, Ian,
Yes.
it can't just be the race component.
Yes, I mean, and when you start to take those kinds of factors into play, what challenges did you face? What kind of neighborhood did you grow up in? What did you have to overcome? What adversity did you have to battle? That's what makes us human and individual, the individual story. That's what this case was all about. Are we just going to make assumptions based on us elevating a singular characteristic of race and make all sorts of assumptions, both negative and positive, right?
Right.
If you looked at the data, an Asian student, an applicant in the top 10% based on academics and other factors had, almost a similar chance of getting in as a black student in the 5th, 6th, or 7th category, right? So it was blatant discrimination. But what if we asked the question of all these applicants, tell us about the challenges you faced? And that's America. That's the essence of who we want to be as a country. Give me an equal shot. That's what the parents of the kids in my schools want. They don't want to be dependent on a system that they think is rigged against them, and that the only way they can be successful is if there are these artificial interventions on the back end.
So important part of the conversation, and I love the fact I always go back to Jackie Robinson, breaking the color barrier in 1947. He looks back on that and he said, racial slurs, violence, hatred, all of those things he experienced, and yet he kept pursuing it. He said, because I knew that that my goal and my fight was in a free society of America, I knew I had a chance, and that he could look at his kids and say, you have a chance, not a guarantee, but you have a chance. And to me, that's the conversation. We've lived with victimhood across all the races, all different spaces, and our politics has become grievance-driven, and we've got to change that.
We have to change that, and part of the way if we change that is to ensure more kids are competent coming out of the K-12 system. It is still the case that the National Assessment for Educational Progress, what's called the nation's report card, still reports that something like only 40% of all 4th and 8th graders are reading at grade level in our country. That's kids of all races. Let's stop this obsession with race, these divisions based on this singular characteristic, and recognize that we have an education crisis that's hurting a majority of our kids of all races. Hopefully decisions like the one today help propel that idea forward. It's not about race. It's about other factors that typically matter more. And those are things like, are enough of our kids being raised in strong, married-to-parent households? Do they have access to school choice and educational freedom to pick the great school that will work for them?
Yeah.
Do they have a personal faith commitment in their own lives? These are the things that matter. Hopefully decisions like that, like today's, allow us to refocus.
So important. Ian Rowe, Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, also the co-founder of the Vertex Partnership Academies, author of Agency, the 4-Point Plan for All Children to Overcome the Victimhood Narrative and Discover Their Pathway to Power. Ian, we always appreciate your time and for elevating the conversation in crucial ways. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. This is a great day on a great topic. Thank you.
All right. Again, that's Ian Rowe from American Enterprise Institute, and he understands the experience because he has lived it, and he's part of those trying to elevate everybody in terms of how we approach education, upward mobility, and really thriving in America. We'll be right back. Some final thoughts coming up on Inside Sources coming up next.
This is Jeff Kaplan, and I am a blue razzmatazz guy. Now, I know maybe you're all about Simply Mango or maybe Tiger's Blood. No judgment, but when it comes to the highly personal decision of your favorite Frazzle flavor, blue razzmatazz is my jam. Well, really, it's my slushie. Frazzle, in case you don't know, is a delicious, refreshing slushie sold at convenience stores. Frazzle got its start here in Utah 20 years ago, and now you find Frazzle machines at convenience stores from coast to coast. If you've never tried Frazzle, or even if you're already a fan like me, get one free on Free Frazzle Friday, every Friday through June at participating locations. They're celebrating Free Frazzle Friday at Holiday Oil, Maverick, Top Stop, and many other convenience stores. Limit one per person, but load up the car, bring the kids. Everybody gets a 12-ounce Frazzle free. For locations and more, get the Frazzle app or go to freefrazzlefriday.com. Maybe you love Georgia Peach or Tangerango. You're going to love the Frazzle flavors.
Life is full of firsts. Your first car, first college class, first trip to the ocean, first house, first child, your first day on the job, and your first day of retirement. As you grow, UFirst is here for all of your important milestones. Come grow with us. UFirst can help you take each first step towards growing your life's potential. Learn more about how UFirst can support you through all of life's firsts at ufirstcu.com. That's ufirstcu.com.
If you're hiring, it can feel like trying to find a needle in a haystack. You can hope the right person comes along, or you can just use ZipRecruiter. Like Marco, President of Operations at Telly Tires and Auto Centers.
ZipRecruiter helps me find all the right people, even the most difficult jobs to fill.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Now try ZipRecruiter free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter.com/FREE.
Have you Googled yourself lately? Are there negative posts from an ex-employee or from a former client? Maybe an outdated news article or sensitive personal information about your family? Search engines don't always get it right. But right or wrong, it's your reputation on the line. That's where Reputation Defender by Norton comes in. One of the most trusted names in online reputation repair, Reputation Defender has been fixing people's search results for over 15 years. Their cutting-edge approaches help you to wipe away unwanted information in your search results. They also promote the good stuff so that it rises to the top, helping you put your best foot forward. Your good name is too valuable to leave to the whims of a Google algorithm. Take control with Reputation Defender. You can start by getting your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com or call 800-401-6681 to speak to an expert. That's 800-401-6681.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. First, a new report found that while homelessness is increasing across the country, Utah is still well below the national average. The report also found that 1 in 3 people who found permanent housing returned to homelessness within 2 years. Second, the World Health Organization's cancer research brand is going to declare aspartame a possible carcinogen. Aspartame is found in a lot of Coca-Cola diet sodas, Mars chewing gum, and some Snapple drinks. Third, Utah's Democratic delegates selected State Senator Kathleen Reeby to be on on the ballot in the upcoming special election to replace Congressman Chris Stewart. 80 degrees and the clouds in the sky in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. Great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program today, obviously a big news day today. Everything from the Supreme Court case on affirmative action. There was also the Supreme Court decision relating to religious accommodation for businesses and why that's an important component to that. A host of other things going on, including the way we continue to radically spend money in this country and all of the challenges that go with that. And so as we look at how we come together on a day like today, when there's so much news going on, we have to remember that this is a nation of nuance, and especially on days like today, it is so easy to get locked into the sweeping generalities or simply the headlines. And there's so much more to it. Social media is a blunt force instrument. Of course, we talk regularly about the challenges of instant certainty, which seems to be the rule of the realm these days. But we end up with these very visceral reactions, rage, not reason. And so we end up in a lot of different echo chambers when it comes to big news days like today. And that's why we always want to get to the next level questions. In terms of what's really going on, what do we really need to know, and more importantly, what kind of conversation do we need to have next? And so rather than just reacting to just the headlines of the day, just take a step back and look for something a little more thoughtful. We try to bring people on this program who have real experience, who understand the issues that they're talking about, and can kind of take us behind the curtain to get a little better perspective in terms of why something might happen a certain way, or why a certain policy may not be the best way to get a result that we actually want. Because again, if all we do is battle the headlines, and if all we talk about is the talking points that are served up from the extremes of both sides of the political spectrum, that always keeps us a very safe distance from actually having the real conversations. And so again, we have to recognize where we are as a nation, and do we have major challenges still in this country? Of course we do. Of course we do. And we don't ignore them. We don't sweep them under the rug. We have to address them. It's how we address them that matters. Sometimes we call it addressing an issue, but what we're really doing is just yelling an issue, or we're putting up a bumper sticker or a meme on social media, rather than taking the time to dig a little deeper, to find a little more data, to understand the issue just a little bit better, to get an opposing point of view, as opposed to just getting the echo chamber and the validation of people who already agree with us. And so it's a different kind of conversation, and on big news days, it's even more important than ever that we get past the headlines. We have to dig in. We have to engage with each other, because that's how we get to better individually, collectively, as a country, and it applies all the way around the world. Well, that wraps it up for Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. I am Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us. And as always, as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires,